Look, we have to do this. We don't have the money for her anymore. We can't take care of her any longer.
Maybe someone will find her and give her a good home.
You would never think of abandoning your own child in an unfamiliar and dangerous setting with no food or shelter. Why then would you abandon your pet? Abandoned animals have feelings as well and suffer tremendously with a very poor chance of survival.
Hey gang, it's your host Phil Lister here with another fun-filled, action-packed tutorial. Today we're going to be doing the Herman Munster quarter-scale bust, sculpted by none other than Jeff Yagher. Here's all the parts. Now, there were two little problem areas on the bust I had to take care of, nothing major. I had to cut and remove a little bit of the resin underneath at the ends where you see these two tabs. Because those areas, it went all the way out to that shelf, and of course it had to fit inside of the slot. So I had to remove some of the resin material, just a minor thing right there, a little bit of surgery. Then, when it came to the railings, if you put them on without modifying them at all, the railings would kind of angle out away from the bust. So what I had to do was I took a Dremel and a sanding drum, and I simply I marked it, and then I removed some of the material at an angle, as you can see here on the video, so that that part of the railing would sit flush right up against the sides of the bust. Now, I decided to paint this in monotone. It's what the client wanted. So, of course, I decided to use black and white, and I mixed about, I don't know, I'm going to say maybe 10 different shades of gray. So I started with the base, and I started by mixing a very dark gray, not quite black, but it was well on its way to being black. But all these parts here had to be painted. Here I'm using my trusty Badger Anthem airbrush. It's a siphon feed, it's not a gravity feed. I've been using this airbrush for years and years, and I absolutely love it. I've got it, I've got it, I guess you could say, fine-tuned or taught. I've got it set up the way I want it, with the right needle and tip. And I mixed a very, very dark gray. And the first order of business is to airbrush the base, getting the sides, the steps all around it. Now, to anyone who's new to airbrushing, you really want to try and keep your paint rather thin, but not as thin as water. You want to try to keep it about the consistency of whole milk. Okay, all these parts have now been airbrushed with this very dark gray. And the next order of business now is I'm going to work on doing the carpet on the steps. I had to also airbrush this part of the steps as well, which was all part of the bust. So that was airbrushed in the same tone. So the next order of business was to do the carpet. Now the patterning on the carpet it looked rather random. And it was embossed. So what I decided to do was I just sort of followed the pattern that was there. I didn't try to do my own pattern. And I base coated it in a lighter shade of gray, and then I used the darker gray for the patterning. Well, that was a little stark. So once I did that, I decided to come back and using another shade of gray that was sort of on the order of the base coat on the stairs themselves, and I just sort of misted over that just to sort of fade the pattern, if you will, into the carpet a little bit more. As you can see here, it doesn't quite show up as well on the video, but there's still a difference in the tonal quality of the pattern and the carpet, but it's just rather subtle. That's really kind of what I wanted to do, was just go with a very subtle difference there. Now the next phase was to dry brush the darker tone over all the parts. So I just used a slightly lighter shade of the base color, and I simply dry brushed all of that, going over all the details, and that really makes all those details pop. To any of you who are already familiar with my videos, you know that I love to dry brush. So here's the base, pretty much complete. Everything's been painted and dry brushed. Now here's a little bit more of a close-up of that carpet and the pattern there. Now the next step, of course, was for Spot. So he was just a very dark gray, again almost black. And the first thing was to dry brush the scales, and then I simply came back and painted each of the teeth as well as the tongue. And then of course I just used a white over the eyes just to give him a kind of a bright look, because I believe his eyes were actually glowing in the show. Now the next order of business is the bust itself, and these were all really clean castings, by the way. Excellent done. So here you can see, this is how I pretty much did all the gray patterning. Starting with a dark gray, and I just airbrushed that into the crevices on the face once I had the lighter shade painted. And I just used various tones of gray, which was contrasty enough to give a difference in the tonal quality. And I just simply used those tones, the darker tones went into all the recesses, and the lighter tones were on the surface, on all the raised surfaces. And then of course, once all the tones are done, I simply detailed the eyes and the teeth. The lips are a little bit tricky because you want to make sure you get them nice and even. So that was a little bit tricky there, but once all the details were in, it started to really look a lot like him. And the coat was done in kind of a medium gray, and then you can see how the banister fits better here. I also had to remove some of the material from the arm, because since the railing was sitting upright, that part of the arm had to be ground away. And here we are, the finished piece. It didn't take long at all to paint. I think I had this one done in about a day. And then of course here's the finished model. I just kept the lunchbox in a black, and then I kind of dry brushed it a little bit to bring out some of the details. This was a fun kit to do. If you can get your hands on one, I highly recommend it. It's a lot of fun to do. I certainly hope you enjoyed this video. I know it was rather short, but it was short but to the point. And remember to please visit my website. And I'm also on Facebook. I'm personally on Facebook, and I have a Lister Models Work Facebook page. So that's it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. So it's time to pull out those brushes and get busy.